Okay, the other day we talked about how to graph in vertex form. And today we're going to look at standard form. Then we're going to talk about how you actually convert from one form to the other. You have to do a little bit more work when it's in standard form to find the vertex. And we're still going to graph it in a similar manner. We're going to plot the vertex first. You're going to use your axis of symmetry to help you find, or you're going to plug in points, use your axis of symmetry to find a couple more points on the other side. Okay, so this is what the standard form of a quadratic equation or function looks like. You have ax squared plus bx plus c. A and b are coefficients, and then you have this constant at the end, c. And a, b, and c can be any real number, decimals, fractions, whole numbers. The graph is still, of course, going to be a parabola. And if your leading coefficient is greater than 0 or positive, then your parabola is going to go up. So similar to vertex form, we looked at the leading coefficient in front, a, in vertex form. If it was positive, your parabola is going up. If it's negative, parabola is going down. So if your parabola is going up, what did we call that vertex? Bless you. What did we call this vertex? Good. And then if your parabola is flipped down, your vertex is a maximum. So that's still the same. Okay, this bottom part is what is new. And this is where I said you're going to have to do some work to find the vertex. Whereas when it was in vertex form, you could easily see it from the equation, but you can't when it's in standard form. What you have to do to get your x coordinate or your h value, in other words, to get your x coordinate, you have to take opposite of the number in front of x, negative b over 2a. So this is a small formula you use just to get the x coordinate. Negative b over 2a, negative b over 2a, negative b over 2a, negative b over 2a. So opposite of the number that's with x over 2 times the number in front of x squared. Now, once you get that x coordinate, how do you think you get your y coordinate or your k value? If we know an x value, how can you get your y? There you go. So then we got to plug in x to get y. Don't you love that? And that's all just to get your vertex. Your axis of symmetry is still the same. It's x equals your h value, or we'll say this negative b over 2a. Remember that our vertex was hk. So x equals h, or the x coordinate of your vertex. Does anybody need me to go back up? Are y'all good? Okay. Which the axis of symmetry is pretty easy to get anyway, because remember, it always has to pass through the what? Good. It's always got to pass through the vertex or your x coordinate. It's always a vertical line. Okay, what I'm going to go through with you is just graphing one or two of them. Then we're going to look at how you convert from one form to the other. And then we're going to look at some algebra problems, like where they reverse and you have to find A and B given the vertex. Okay, your steps to graph. Of course, figure out your vertex and then tell whether it is a minimum or maximum. Give the axis of symmetry, which is x equals h. Then you have to plug in two x values that are around your vertex. So around close to your vertex, remember we plugged in two x values that were either higher or lower than our vertex, and then you use your axis of symmetry to get your other points. All right, one new thing that they ask you to do in this section is to give the range of your graph. Can anybody tell me what range is? You've got things that are associated with graphs and functions called domain and range. Have y'all heard of those before? Yes, no. Okay, I see somebody else saying yes and somebody saying no. All right, by the end of Algebra 2 trig and pre-cal, you're going to be sick of giving a domain and range. But the domain is simply all the set of x's that can be on your graph. So it's a set of all x's, set of x's is really what you need to know. In other words, like all you have to do to get your domain of a graph is you look at how far left and right your graph goes in relation to the x-axis. So how far left and right. So domain is set of x's, and you look at a graph how far left and right it goes. How far left and right is every parabola going that we've graphed? Good. They're going, whether it's up, they're going left and right forever, and whether it's flipped down, it's still going left and right forever. So domain, the reason they'll ask you for domain of your quadratic is all real numbers every time. So domain for quadratic is all real numbers. Your range is what changes. Range is the set of what? Good. Range is a set of y's that can be on your function or on your graph. And the way that you look at a graph and tail, which we're going to in a minute, is you look at in relation to the y-axis, how far down and up your graph is going. How far down and up. And so if you remember graphing parabolas the other day, like if they were flipped down, of course, you've got that top point and it doesn't go any further. And if it was an upward parabola, it didn't go down past your vertex, past a certain point. So that's why the range changes. All right, let's look at graphing one. All right, I'm gonna go through everything like in Math Excel that they're gonna ask you to give. All right, notice, of course, this is in standard form. You have it in order from x squared plus x plus your number, constant at the end. The first thing is give your vertex. And you have to remember, what was that tiny formula?
Negative b over 2a.
Good, negative b over 2a. Something that might help you if you're like, what in the world's a and b and c, is just to go up top when you start. What is the value of a? What number is in front of x squared? 1. And what is b? B is always the number in front of x. So it is positive 2. And c is what? 1. I'll tell you something cool about c in a minute. All right, so going back to this, b was 2, so I plug in. A was 1, and then you just simplify that. What will all of this become? Negative 1. Okay, so we know my x coordinate so far, or we know half of it, so negative 1. And then you have to plug in negative 1 here. Okay, when you do all of this, you get what? You get 0. So my vertex is at negative 1, 0. Okay, on the second part, let's go ahead and list the axis of symmetry. Remember, the axis of symmetry is always x equals your first coordinate of your vertex. So x equals negative 1. Okay, so just like what we did in vertex form, let's plot our vertex first. So negative 1, 0. And you have that axis of symmetry line. Okay, notice that your x coordinate of your vertex is negative 1, which you can also see that from your graph. You need to pick 2 numbers that are either to the right of negative 1 or to the left of it, meaning that you need to pick either 0 and 1 to plug in, or you need to pick what? Good, negative 2, negative 3. So I always try to just stay close to the vertex. If you venture out too far, this being squared, you're going to wind up with really big numbers. So always just try to stay close to it. Which numbers do you want to plug in? Negative 2 and negative 3, or 0 and 1? Yeah, I'm always a fan of 0. So now we have, this is your third step, is just picking your 2x values to plug in. So we chose 0. Look, do that in your head. If you go through and you plug in 0 here and here, what are you left with? Good, you're left with 1. And then we are choosing to plug in 1. What does that leave you with? Okay, plot those 2 points. And then use your axis symmetry line. You're going to go on the other side of your graph. Since this is one place away from your axis symmetry, go across one place. This is 2 places away, go across 2 places. And then last but not least, connect. All right, going back, and I should have mentioned this at first. How could you tell in your equation that your parabola is going up? Because what'd you say? You've got, what was your A value? What was this leading number? 1, and it's positive, so it's going up. If that leading number in front of x squared is negative, it's down. Is your vertex a minimum or a maximum here? It is a minimum. Okay, one more thing. The range. I told you that the range you get by seeing how far down your graph goes. So only look at your y-axis, and you always look at it from bottom up. The lowest part always comes first. So how far down does this parabola go in relation to the y-axis? Where does it stop on the y-axis? Good. It stops at 0, and it is touching 0, so I put a bracket. Do y'all remember interval notation from chapter 2 that you probably hated at the time? How far up is it going? Good. It's going up forever. So your range for this parabola is bracket 0 to infinity. Look, where did it cross the y-axis? It crossed the y-axis at positive 1. What number do you have at the end here? Positive 1. The number at the end, the constant by itself, is always your y-intercept every time. Why is that? Well, I think I was going to say it. What'd you say? When you're on the y-axis, what's the value of x? When you're on the y, what's x? So if we plugged in 0, right? And we wound up with 1. So that's why. That's one thing I do like about standard form is you can easily see where it should cross the y-axis every time. Okay. All right, let's do another one. This time we'll go a little bit faster through it. Does anyone have any questions so far? And then I'll show, how many of you have a graphing calculator? Okay, all right, a couple of you. You don't have to have one, and I'm trying to get us the classroom set of these to use. Never mind. Anyway, I have a classroom set of 89, but you can't use those on the ACT. So anyway, trying to get us the set that we can work with. All right, number 2. Hello?
You should keep in her room.
Who's?
In her room. There's no AFS postulate.
Oh.
It has a big dump.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. That is cute. Okay, let's figure out our vertex. What is your formula to figure out just the x coordinate? Good, negative b over 2a. What is a? Good, a is negative 2, b is what? Negative 3. C is positive 4. Where should it cross the y-axis? 4. We'll see if it does. It should. All right, going back to this, let's plug in to figure out our x coordinate. So we have negative negatives will make positive. What does this give you? You get negative 3/4. So that's gross. Woohoo. So our x coordinate is negative 0.75. And then let's go through and plug in. If you want to plug in the decimal equivalent of it using your calculator, you can. I'll just work with the fractions because we love fractions so much. Okay, be careful with order of operations. I see a lot of people multiply before they use that exponent. Be careful about that. When you square this part, you're going to get positive 9/16. When you square a fraction, square top and bottom. And then in the middle, go ahead and multiply here. This becomes what? Negative 18 over 16. What will that reduce to? It will reduce to negative 9 over 8. All right, when you type this in, because we're going to convert it to decimal anyway, graph it, you get 5.125. So all that comes out to 5.1. Okay, plot your vertex. You can go by halves. I'm going to choose to stick with 1, but you can go by half, 1/4, whatever you need to do. Okay, so negative 0.75 and then 5.1 to be about here. Should your parabola be going up or down? Good. Why? Good. It's negative. So that means our vertex is going to be a maximum. You need to pick some x values that are to the left or right. So tell me some x values to pick to the left or right of this. What's to the right of it? Good. Let's choose 0 and 1. If you plug in 0, that will be on the y-axis. Well, never mind. I don't want to do too much. Okay, so let's go back down here. We're going to plug in 0. What should that give you? What do you have at the end of your equation? 4. And we've already said when we're on the y-axis, x is 0. So you can easily look at your equation and get that point. All right, let's plug in 1. You should get what? You should get -1. Once again, make sure that you're doing exponents before you multiply. Okay, go back up, plot your 2 points. So you had 0, 4 and 1, -1. Use your axis of symmetry. And then connect. What is your range? How far down? We always look at how far down it goes first. How far down is it going? Good. It's going down to -infinity. Infinity always gets a parentheses. How far up is it going? It's going up to 5.1. And it's touching that point, so put a bracket. Okay, questions? Don't you guys love graphic quadratic functions? Especially with decimals, fractions? Yeah. All right, the next part of what we're going to look at is more of the algebra part. If you need to see another graphing one, I will do that with you later. Okay, so you're asked to put this in vertex form. What is vertex form? What does it need to look like? It needs to look like y equals what? Y'all remember what went here in front of this parenthesis? Good, we need A, and guess what? We already have A. So that part works out nicely. A is what? A is -1. We need H, and we obtain H, or the x coordinate of your vertex, by the formula. And we also need, what else? We also need K, but that comes from the y coordinate of your vertex. So we need A, H, and K. Okay, we already know what A is. And then I have to fill in everything else. So let's figure out what X, or your H, is. Got negative B over 2A. What is the value of B? Good, the value of B is +2. So what does X or H come out to be? Comes out to be -1. You've got that 2 times -1 on the bottom? Oh, you're right. Thank you so much. Okay, this comes out to be +1. Do I change this, or do I leave that minus sign? Remember, the minus sign was built in, and we always do the opposite of what H is. So like if this is +1, then when you plug it in here, it becomes -1. So always remember to do the opposite. So you would leave that minus sign. So instead of putting +1, you have -1. Does that make sense? Okay, K, we have to plug +1 in to figure out what K is. Or that's also your y coordinate. What does this become? What do you get for K? Be careful here. This, good, you get 6. This stays, this becomes -1. So out for that. So we know A, we have H and K. That is this standard form equation in vertex form. All right, do y'all have any questions about that? If you're more of an algebra type person and you don't like graphing, you'll probably like that particular thing better. Okay, one last problem. What? Yeah, sure. Do y'all need to see another one of those? Are you good? Okay. Ryan, are you good? No, that's the one. Okay. Okay, last thing we're going to look at In this particular problem, they give you your vertex. They give you your vertex and then they ask you to find the unknown coefficients or constants. Okay, how do you find your vertex from this form? You got negative b over 2a, and they actually give you, like, this is your x or your h coordinate, so you're working backwards. What is the value of a? A is 1. We're trying to figure out b, and we're also trying to figure out c. And they tell you that x is 3, so just plug in what you know. And then we're trying to find b, and let's solve for a. Bless you. Okay, what is, and let's plug in, of course, 1 for a, and then go through and solve this equation for b. Okay, guys, what is b? You should get that b is -6. Last thing we gotta do is find c. Okay, this is what you know. You have an ordered pair, 3, -4, that this graph passes through. So you have an x and y that is on this graph. You also know a is 1, and now we know that b is -6. And we need to find c. Tell me what you can do with 3 and -4 to help you find c. Good. Plug that in for your x and y. Okay, what is c? 5. When you add 9, c is 5. So in those type of problems, of course, just use the -b over 2a, use what you're given, and work backwards, plug in, find missing variables. All right, does anyone have a question about that? Okay, work on your Math Excel for 4.2. And if any of you have that 4.1 that you want to turn in, you can. I posted solutions for it, so I'll check it off and give it back to you. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you. Elena. Thank you. You know what I'm talking about? Is it not such a dreary day? Oh my God. Are y'all tired from having to be here 3 days in a row?
Yes.
Thank you. I would play us music, but my Google Play Music transferred to YouTube Music, and then YouTube Music is blocked. And then Spotify is blocked, and Pandora's blocked. Everything else like fine is blocked. So I'm gonna figure out a way around that.